You there? RAI, was it? Could you answer the question I just posited? Almost as soon as the question was raised, Ray snapped out of his deep thoughts and slowly returned his gaze to the instructor, who stood still and smiled at him. Her smile seemed rather scary, not the kind and soft one she usually displayed. Instructor Karina was infamous for getting pissed at students who weren't paying attention in her class, and it was clear she had caught Ray spacing out. Still, since he was a newcomer and she was quite merciful, she gave him a saving grace. If he could answer the question she posed, which was asked when he wasn't paying attention, she would let him off the hook. And so, she stood there and waited for his response. Tension easily soared in the class as Ray's classmates turned to look at him, their faces displaying multifarious emotions, mostly giving eyes of empathy. It was clear that a few of them had also fallen victim to the same tactic by this instructor. I believe you asked about the method of properly stabilizing a newly formed mana circle once it has been created. Ray suddenly said as he rose to his feet. Gasps and surprised reactions filled the classroom. There was no way he would have been called if he was listening in class, especially with Karina smiling the way she was, which meant he must have been absent-minded. Yet, he was able to perfectly replicate the question the same way she asked it. Yes. And can you tell me the answer to that question? The slightly surprised instructor still doubled down on her question, despite Ray's response. After all, it was one thing to remember the question, and it was another to pay attention throughout the class. Fortunately for Ray, he surpassed the expectations of his instructor. According to what you were explaining, the most natural way to do so is by learning to control mana flow, and then directing mana close to the heart for an extended period of time, so the newly created mana circle eventually becomes self-sustaining. The more efficient method is to use enchanted items like the one this academy has to insert secondary mana into the body, which takes on the form of the individual's own mana in order to feed the circle and make it stable. There's also the liquid supplement version being devised at the moment, but since it is still incomplete, particularly the stabilizing aspect of mana integration, the product still causes instability when introduced to a person's body. At this point, even the instructor had to slightly open her mouth in surprise. The smile on her face vanished entirely, and instead she looked at Ray with wide open eyes. She wasn't the only one, too. Every student was staring at him that way. Instructor Karina had never once failed in calling out distracted students, and that meant everyone in the classroom knew better than to space out. Yet, Ray completely broke the record and shattered expectations. I believe that answers your question, instructor. Why, yeah, you may sit. Thank you. Ray bowed his head and sat, heaving a sigh of relief as he did so. That was a rather close one he just had, and honestly, he would have been super screwed if it hadn't been for Emile. Thank you so much, Emile. I owe you big time. He. You're very welcome. That lady, though, she wanted you to fail in front of the whole class. The nerve of her. I deserve it, though. I got distracted during her class. Not only was his central consciousness occupied with thoughts, but other layered aspects of his mind were also occupied with other things that he didn't pay the lecture much mind. To him, it was just noise that he had silenced. But, who would have expected Emile to have listened to all of it? Even Lucielle seemed rather fixated on it. I suppose I should take school seriously for the duration of time that I spend here. All of this reminded him of his time on Earth, and that wasn't a necessarily happy time for him. Still, to preserve my disguise, and also to make life easier for me in this highly competitive space, I'll need to take these things relatively seriously. Hopefully, he wouldn't be spending too much time with the dragons anyway. That said, I still can't get over what I saw. Ray's mind ultimately went back to what he was thinking about right before Instructor Karina interrupted his thoughts. What exactly are those glitches in Adonis status windows? There were two glitches that he noticed when he observed the system panels, and they were puzzling to him. What are and $at, $3 0 and are at and $at? He had no idea. Esm said she noticed some glitches in status windows, so I guess this is what she was referring to. Of course, this isn't the first time I've seen it. The only other time he saw a glitch was on Ader's status window, and when he asked, the familiar gave his usual response. I can't remember. Now that he was witnessing the same glitch in Adonis' status window, and Esm told Ray that she could see a glitched skill in his own status window, he had to figure out a similarity that they all shared. Well, we are both otherworlders, so, maybe that's it? No. Esm didn't see the same glitch in the skills of the others. She also never met Adrian, so he couldn't have confirmed his suspicion on that. Or could it refer to something SSS tier? Does that mean Adonis has an SSS tier skill? No, he would have used it already if that was the case. Ray rubbed his chin as he fell deep into contemplation once again. Of course, this time, he was also paying rapt attention in class by using a certain portion of his layered thoughts to process the information. In any case, I don't think I can find the answers right now, unless I rely on pure speculation. And that was a dangerous way to go about deciphering information. As for the safest way, Ray already had it figured out. I'll have to ask him directly. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. I want to begin a mass release from tomorrow, so make sure you support me a lot during that period. Hope you enjoyed the chapter. Ding. The first class ended after about an hour, and a long break was announced for the students. Once the digital bell rang, the instructor excused herself, stealing one final glance at Rai, and also at Luke Ia before exiting the classroom. The reason Karina looked at the latter as well was because she asked a lot of intelligent questions, and they both entered a small debate. The winner was, of course, Karina, but that didn't prevent her from looking at Luke Ia with curious eyes. Both of the new students were exceptional. She had been briefed on that much, but she never expected an incident to occur on just their first day. They show a lot of promise, was her fleeting thought before leaving the classroom, and letting the overexcited students enjoy their break. Needless to say, there was a lot of noise the moment she stepped out. Rai, that was awesome. For real, man. I really didn't think you'd be able to answer that. Even I don't think I could have given such a fluid answer like you did, and I was paying full attention. Sure you were. Hey. But, damn. Luke Ia, you were amazing as well. Right? Why would you get into a debate with the instructor? I mean, you made a lot of convincing points, but... I mean, instructors obviously know more than us. Did you formally learn magic before coming here? You really blew me away with everything you were saying. I felt the same. Honestly, the both of you are incredible. Once break started, the majority of students in the classroom flocked around Ray and Lucielle, bombarding them with words of praise and compliments. They had innocent eyes that brimmed with energy, some of them more than the others. A lot of them were starstruck, which was weird considering both Ray and Lucielle were the newbies of the class. Of course, not all students acted so excessively. In fact, a few students didn't even bother with both of them and simply enjoyed their break by forming their own small group or just occupying their space in the class. One of them was Ado and I. Seems like he's a class loner. He immediately left the classroom once it was break. Ray's thoughts trailed as he navigated the maelstrom of words directed at him by his over-enthusiastic classmates. That's a bad move, Adonis. You should try to blend in if you want to keep your disguise. It's not like you can just hide in the background with your looks. Since Adonis was handsome, he would get attention wherever he went. Rather than excluding himself from the group, he should have capitalized on his good looks and strength to gain a foothold in the class, obtaining everyone's support and trust. At least, that was what Ray thought. It's not as easy as it sounds, though. I can tell now. Ray forced a smile as he was bombarded with even more questions. He looked to his side and found Lucielle giggling and talking freely with the ones who were talking to her directly, mostly the girls, and a few smitten guys. She looks like she's genuinely enjoying herself. It always surprised him how easy it was for Lucielle to acclimate to this social setting compared to him. I should also give it my all. Resolved to do better, Ray braced himself for the next question that would be thrown his way. He was determined to answer properly this time. Are the two of you perhaps lovers? Yet. Ray's eyes nearly widened as he heard the question from someone random in the crowd. Before he could dismiss it as nonsense, however, a rather sizable number of people began to echo out the question and double down on it in curiosity. What should I respond with? He wondered to himself, taking a quick look at Lucielle, who was now being assailed with the question. Was it even worth considering? He had to tell the truth. We're not. He managed to croak out, a little proud of himself for telling the truth. Really? Then, what exactly is your relationship? Do you like her? If you don't, could you link me up with her? And no. Link me. We can all try our luck, you know? She's so hot, man. And smart too. I wonder just how strong she is. Gives me shivers, man. Ray couldn't help but be surprised by how brazen the Dragon Boys were about such a delicate topic. A school crush was something people usually liked to keep secret, and they would never just expressly declare their intentions to newcomers. He would have assumed this was a trait exclusive to the boys alone if he couldn't overhear the conversation between Lucielle and the girls she was speaking to. Can you introduce me to Rai? I really like him. Me too. He's so handsome, and smart too, maybe he could coach me, and, well. I would really like to get to know him better. How big do you think he is down there? I'm going crazy just thinking about it. The hell? Ray's head nearly exploded when he heard all the things they were saying about him. Even the girls were perverts. He had initially thought the dragons had an uncanny similarity with humans, but the longer he spent with these people, the more he began to pick up on slight but subtle differences. I've actually seen him down there. Lucille's voice caused Ray to stiffen that very instant. And no way. He slowly turned his head, as if he was a machine, and looked at the excited Lucielle as she smiled naughtily at her newfound girlfriends. She saw me naked back then, she's telling the truth. Does that mean she's going to? His eyes widened considerably. Tell us. How does it look like? What's the size? What color is it? Did you touch it before? How did it feel like? Yes, tell us the texture. The girth. Did you see the full length? As all of these questions bombarded Lucielle, her sly smile widened, and for a second, she tilted her gaze to meet his. He slowly shook his head to tell to stop. But, the daring expression on her face told him she wasn't going to listen to him. At that moment, a random thought popped into his mind. Rather than utilizing the multiple skills that existed in his arsenal to stop Lucielle, or even distracting everyone with something grand or simply telling Lucielle not to say anything in a commanding tone, he decided to follow his teenage instincts. Whoosh! Rushing towards Lucielle, he attempted to silence her by placing his hand on her lips. That's right, this was Ray's frantic solution to his problem. Unfortunately, things didn't go exactly as he wanted him to. Well, that would be an understatement, considering what happened next. He used too much speed to dart in her direction, and just as he closed in on her, she abruptly looked at him with a surprised face. Ray tried to stop, but inertia was applied at that very last minute, resulting in his hand flying forward, and his face soon following suit. The end result. Gasps filled the classroom as Ray and Lucielle collapsed on each other, with the former being on top, his hand on her chest, and his lips pressed against hers. It was unbelievable that such a thing would happen, but it did. Ray and Lucielle know, Rai and Luke Ia just kissed. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Yeah, I know all these things are cliché, but just hang with me, okay? It is funny regardless. Are the two of you perhaps lovers? The words of one of Ray's classmates echoed in the air, followed by a bunch of other excited statements and questions from the others. They had wide, sparkling eyes as they asked the shameless question, and Ray watched all of this with a slight sigh of relief, a far cry from his expression the previous time such a question was raised to him. Right now, he was seated on his chair, surrounded by the students of Class 1A, and they were practically bombarding him with questions. Looking beside him, he could see that Lucielle was also going through her own interrogation by the absurdly perverted girls. Everything was perfectly in place. Whew. That was a close one. Ray thought to himself, his fingers brushing against his lips as he remembered what happened prior to this moment. Or rather, what was supposed to happen. Using tempera to reverse the time of everyone in this classroom was a smart choice. Of course, real time isn't affected, and nothing outside this classroom was subject to the skill, but still. Smiling to himself victoriously, he gave himself a nod of satisfaction. I was able to prevent that catastrophe from happening. Well, technically, it already happened. In fact, Ray could still taste Lucielle on his lips, and he couldn't even look at her the same way again, though he wanted to think that it was because of the recency of the incident. However, none of his classmates including Lucielle would have any idea about what had just happened since he reversed their memories as well. The disadvantage of tempera, which was physical touch, was easily resolved by his perfect domain of the divine, which spatially made it possible for him to be in contact with everyone at the same time. Hence, the ease in his skill's use. I could have taken a lot less complicated route to prevent this, but, sigh. I guess being back in school sort of does this to me. With all of that going on his mind, he had to find a way to address the mob that was circling him, while also hurling questions at him. If he let things continue like this, then it wouldn't be long before the question was asked. Fortunately for Ray, he already knew what to do about this. Class rep, aren't you supposed to take us for a tour of the school, or something? Indeed. He used the forbidden technique called consorting to authority. Oh. I thought I'd give you some time to blend well with the class for wow. Look at the time. I didn't know so much time had passed already. Ray smiled to himself as he watched the nervous act Mija gave as she came to his rescue. Of course, the time would seem to have passed by so quickly. That's what happens when only your bodies are reversed in time. Ultimately, it was his victory. Okay, everyone. Break it up. You can talk to them later, after their tour. Just like clockwork, Mija saved Ray from his ordeal by intervening right before the cursed scenario began. That meant Lucielle was never given the chance to humiliate him. This is only a temporary solution, though. I'll need to talk to her later about boundaries and the importance of information compartmentalization. These were his thoughts as he rose to his feet and followed Mija. Lucielle also followed suit, since the two of them would be going with the able class rep for whatever tour that she had planned. Hee. Ray heard a light chuckle from Lucielle, and so he looked at her to determine what was so funny. What his eyes saw caused him to nearly stop dead in his tracks for a second. Huh? Why is she looking at me like that? He kept a calm facade as he watched her narrow her eyes and cover her lips as she chuckled. Not only that, but she even licked her lips once she was satisfied with her giggles. Ray would have freaked out if not for his status privileges, but it was also thanks to his understanding of Lucille's behavior that he felt a bit anchored to the realm of common sense and calmness. There's no way she knows what happened. The skill affected everyone in the classroom, after all. Nodding to himself, he trailed behind Mijie enduring the strange stare that he received from Lucille throughout the whole thing. Moments later. Once again, my name is Mijie, and welcome to the Draconic Imperial Academy. As the three students walked in the hallway, the class rep turned to both Ray and Lucille and flashed her wonderful smile at them. Cute and adorable were the best words to describe her. She had a lively spirit about her that made it obvious she enjoyed her duty towards them, and even as all three of them began their tour, her steps had a bouncy feel to them. So, yeah, I'll be taking you around the academy and explaining a bunch of stuff to you. If you have any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to ask me, K. Lucille was the first to reply with an energetic K. However, Ray quietly stroked his fingers on his chin for a second before raising his hand up for his first question. Yes, what is it, Rai? I was just wondering if the break would be long enough to accommodate the entire tour. He asked with a slightly cautious tone. From his experience, recess periods or break times weren't very long, at least, not long enough for a detailed tour. He didn't want his tour rushed, but at the same time, he didn't want to get in trouble for being late for the next class. Hence, his question. Don't worry about that. The first day of the week is usually the freest since that's when newbies enter the class, so we have a lot of time. Oh. I see. Class 1A usually spends this time slacking off, since we never have any new students right from the entrance exams, but today is an exception. Indeed it was. It's funny, but other classes are the ones who will have free time for no reason today, since no new students are entering their class. Crazy, right? Mijie stared at both Ray and Lucille, her innocent expression expecting a response to her rhetorical question. Of course, they made sure to respond appropriately. Yeah. Indeed it is. In any case, I'm happy we have new faces. I'm sure everyone feels the same, which is why they circled around you all like that. Well, that isn't the only reason, but... A slight hint of pink appeared on her cheeks as her voice trailed and the last of her words were lost in silence. Yeah. The class is livelier than I expected. Ray responded with a slight smile. Well, what did you expect? Mijie asked as she turned to him. I don't know. It's an elite class, right? I expected stuck-up people, sort of like that. Mijie gave a smile that was slightly different from the usual innocent one. It was one that had a hint of danger to it. Perhaps that would have been the case if you were different. Ray felt a little apprehensive due to the change in mood, so he felt a little hesitant asking the question. Still, he did. Different how? As soon as he asked this, her smile broadened and she parted her lips. If you weren't strong. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Hope you enjoyed the chapter. Just as Mijie promised, Ray and Lucille experienced a very immersive school tour. They were shown around the building that all students of their stage containing classes A, F enjoyed, while also pointing out the other buildings meant for the other stages. She also didn't fail to mention the advanced and final academic rounds that could be taken in the academy once a student was done with the base rounds. The buildings for those existed in a separate compound from the main one, so they didn't get to see them. Instead, Mijie made up for it with lots of stories and detailed information about the school grounds. By doing so, Ray and Lucielle were bound to feel welcome and not lost at all in the new community they found themselves in. From the cafeteria, to the leisure halls, to the library, to wherever else that existed on the campus, MJ spared no detail in her tour. This continued, until finally, they arrived at the last tour venue. This is the practical hall. A massive building, the second largest thus far, stood right in front of the students, as she introduced it with childlike glee. It was clear that she had a lot of memories with this place. The building was at least 4 stories tall, with a width that was incomparable to other buildings within the same campus. Not even the library or main classroom building was as wide as this, and for good reason. This is where magic and combat is practiced. MJ spoke, walking towards the building. Ray and Lucielle obediently trailed behind her as she went over the details. Apparently, the first 3 floors were for the first, second, and third years of the basic stages, while the uppermost floor was reserved for guests, instructors, or seniors from the more advanced stages. For their purposes, she was only supposed to show them around a first-year hall. Once they entered the building, they were met with 2 reception desks, and behind them were rather strict-looking women who were supposed to take the records of those who came to use the hall, and those who were done using it. MJ handled the process by explaining the tour, and all they had to do was sign in with a facial scan. Right before they ventured in, one of the strict-looking receptionists leaked out a rather sly smile and said something strange. "He's also inside, you know." Upon hearing that, MJ became flustered for some reason. "Why, you didn't need to tell me that." She even went as far as loudly protesting, before reducing her voice and mumbling nearly unintelligible words to herself. "I already know." Ray and Lucielle remained still and didn't comment on this, though they were observant enough to recognize the 2 receptionists exchanging knowing smiles with each other. There was clearly a story behind this. As I was saying, MJ made sure to divert attention from the rather weird scene by continuing her talk as a guide. Most of the people that use this place are from lower classes, since they're trying to get to higher classes. Once again, she mentioned how the rank system in the academy operated. Right now, we are at the top of the food chain among those in the first year or stage. To reach Class A, you'll have to accrue enough weekly points, or get a considerably high score in any school event. I see. So that's why WANA members don't really come here. Well, it's not just that. I don't want you to get the wrong idea and think that our classmates are slacking off. MJ quickly interjected. They're not. It's just that there are a lot of resources available to us at Class 1A, so it's enough to do well and maintain the current points we have. You might not know this, since you 2 are exceptions, but everyone in that class had to advance from a lower class at some point in time. You don't get from a lower class to Class A without being dedicated. MJ spoke with such pride about her classmates, which went to show how highly she thought of them. This was yet another reason why she was a solid class representative. Are we really that exceptional? Lucielle asked with a raised brow and a bright smile, clearly welcoming some type of praise as a response. Well, MJ did not disappoint. Indeed. It's rare for people to do that. The last time it happened was years ago, and the person has already advanced to stage 2. I see. I see. Her smile only broadened upon taking in the information. I'd say it's also very difficult for people to get to rank A through weekly points. Since they were already placed in their appropriate class after the entrance, think of it as their cap at that point in time. To increase their cap, they'd have to train very hard and surpass their limits. Even then, the competition is so high that it's almost impossible to get through with just weekly points unless the student suddenly becomes exceptional. According to MJ's explanation, there was only one sure way to advance to another class, and it was obvious to all 3 of them. Academy events provide an opportunity for students to shine in respective ways, which gather them a lot of points, or downright promotes them at the go. It's why everyone here is so excited for them, and why participation is always high. I see. I see. Both Ray and Lucielle nodded. This happened as soon as they entered the general training hall dedicated to the Stage 1 students. WO. Those words forcefully left the lips of both Ray and Lucielle as they took the expanse in. It was akin to a massive auditorium, with people busy with respective weapons or items as though they were in a gym. There was more than enough space for people to train their martial arts, magic, skills, etc. Dedicated items, such as training dummies, target posts, and a bunch of other equipment, were all available for use, making this a place that hundreds of people could properly train in without any interruption or discomfort. Amidst this crowd of people, though, there was a particular golden-haired boy that drew attention to himself with his intense training, and the multiple broken equipment that lay by his side. He was also given more than enough space by the other dragon students, making him pop out even more. Some people were even distracted by their training by just watching him. His form was exquisite. Every motion he made was immaculate. His dedication was flawless. And, his consistency, it was a marvel. As Ray and Lucielle entered the vast room, they instantly recognized him, though only the former knew him for who he really was. Mijie also noticed him, and her cheeks instantly flushed pink as she tried to look away. His sweat sprayed all over the ground as he shattered another weapon he wielded, rubbed himself with his towel, and went for another weapon hanging somewhere on the wall. His chiseled abs showed a little as he did this, and his perfectly toned muscles were also on full display, such that both Lucielle and Mijie couldn't keep their eyes off him. Ray as well, though his reasons were completely different. "What are you doing here, Adonis?" Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. I apologize for yesterday's wrong upload. Forgive me. Also, I am serious about the mass release. It will happen for at least 10 days, like that last time. Be prepared. Isn't that Ado and I? What's he doing there? Lucielle was the first to mention his presence, despite all three of them gawking at him for nearly a minute. A small look around would also make it clear that they weren't alone in the attention directed at him. Still, someone had to say something, and as soon as Lucielle said this, all of them had to come out of their spell. Ray heaved a sigh as soon as Lucielle spoke, happy that the moment ended without any form of awkwardness. At least, externally. "Your sus, master." Emile wouldn't stop giving him the look despite how hard he tried to explain that he was only observing Adonis' great forms and diligence, and not his insanely attractive body. The way his sweaty skin gleamed under the light, the way his biceps and triceps, and perfect abs, all meshed together perfectly, while complementing his handsome face and clear eyes, all of those were not Ray's priority. He made that known to Emile, but she wouldn't have any of it. "So this is why you still don't have a woman despite how amazing you are, master." In the end, he just had to keep his thoughts shut and stop responding to the allegations made against him by his own familiar. Instead, he focused on the ongoing conversation between Lucielle and Mijie. "Yeah. Ado and I is the only one in our class who takes this place very seriously. He still comes every day, before and after every class. During breaks, and during any spare time he has on campus, before returning to his dorms." The way Mijie looked as she spoke about him was reminiscent of an admirer. "He's the newest member of our class, after all. He joined a month ago, and he has only been in the academy for a total of 2 months. Amazing, right?" Lucielle nodded, even saying stuff that urged the girl to go on with more explanations. "You really admire him, huh?" What? And no, it's not like that at all. I just admire his hard work is all." Her cheeks displayed even more hints of red as she uttered those words, stealing a few glances at the training Adonis/Ado. Ray witnessed all of this and laughed to himself. Adonis, you lucky bastard. You already have a dragon girl fawning over you. He now made sense of what one of the receptionists told me back when they just entered the building. She was referring to Adonis being present. Judging from her reaction back then, and also right now, it's obvious. He controlled his laughter, so the girls wouldn't notice. I wouldn't even be surprised if there were more admirers that want him. He's the whole package, after all, of course, I mean that objectively. He already knew Emil would come after him, so he had to add that caveat. The most important takeaway to Ray was simply that Adonis was not helping himself by making all these decisions that would ultimately draw all of the unnecessary attention that he was receiving from everyone. He's the class loner, and he's the only one in Class 1A that comes here regularly. He's spending his leisure in such a place, and he's working harder than pretty much everyone else here. His features make him stand out, and his actions increase that visibility. Ray wanted to sigh as he was having these thoughts, but he controlled himself. Right now, you're like a nail sticking out, Adonis. And there was one thing that usually happened to that sort of person. They got struck down. I'm not one to talk, though. Luciel and I went and overdid it to get promoted to Class 1A as fast as possible. Back when he made the decision, he didn't know how incredibly rare it was for examines to instantly shoot up to Class A. He simply thought he and Luciel would be recognized as skilled and exceptional, not as pure exceptions. Standing out too much is a problem, but I think we can maintain a balance here. We can still be exceptional students, while blending in with everyone else and being part of the system. Ultimately, this was all a means to the end that he wanted. Granted, he still wasn't sure how long it would take for him to reach that end. One step at a time, though. Right now, his central priority was to somehow insert himself in the conversation between Luciel and me as casually as possible, of course. I think. Me you have a crush on Ado and I, don't you? Doesn't she, Rai? Luciel suddenly turned to Ray, asking the most out-of-pocket thing. What the hell? Why would you ask that? She's clearly very shy about it. More importantly, why drag me into this? Despite having such thoughts, Ray maintained an air of elegance and calmness. Rather than respond with a yes or no, he simply shrugged off the question and gave a stoic expression. Please just let it go. He prayed to himself. Stop it. Stop it, you two. I said I don't. I don't have a crush on him, okay. But what did I do? Ray's eyes widened as he received a portion of the blame for something that Luciel clearly caused on her own. Me didn't look like she was ready to receive any of his explanations, though. Her eyes were closed, and her face was tomato red. It almost looked like she was burning up with a fever. Does that mean I can pursue him? What? I mean, you're not interested in him, right? Luciel kept teasing, intentionally pushing all the buttons like a teenage girl would. That, but, and no way. Ray found it incredibly painful to watch this cute scene, seeing as Luciel was just downright torturing the more innocent me. Innocent, huh? His thoughts trailed as he looked at the teary-eyed dragon girl before him. How true is that? All of his recent experiences highly contradicted what he previously knew about dragons, so much so that he began to feel conflicted on many things. No matter how I look at it, they seem very human to me. As his thoughts flowed, he couldn't help but have a thought. A rather dangerous thought. Perhaps they also need a bit of guidance, like the elves? Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. What do you all think? Do dragons deserve redemption? Or should they be viewed as scum? Are there any further questions so far? In an attempt to divert attention from the topic of her crush on Adonis, Mija quickly changed the mood back to an official one. Her stuttering and overtly flustered expression still made it clear that she was simply hiding from her feelings, though. Questions. Why yet? I mean, I've shown you the hall, so if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next place on our list. Mija replied with a rather daring smile. As class rep, it was ultimately her decision to escort the two out of the hall and completely change the kind of conversation they could have. Thankfully, Lucielle took the hint and decided to stop teasing Mija. Instead, she went for a rather surprising question. One that not even Ray predicted, though it was something he had been thinking about, even at that very moment. What are your thoughts on humans? The moment this question echoed into the air, some kind of tense silence suddenly enveloped everything around the three. It felt heavy. Humans, huh? The kind and innocent expression that Mija previously displayed instantly melted off, replaced by a sinister look. Her eyes shone bright pink, and from the chilly expressionless reaction she had upon first hearing the question, her demeanor quickly morphed into something far more malevolent. Her small lips grew broad and formed a bloodthirsty smile, revealing a suppressed excitement that would cause anyone to tremble. Those inferior worms, my thoughts on them aren't special. She began, each word laced with utter disgust towards the subject of discussion. There are playthings, meant to entertain us in multiple ways. They're stubborn for sure, not knowing their place, but in the end, they're livestock who are only useful in their deaths and continuous suffering. Ray and Lucielle were silent as they heard the kind and innocent Mija spew these words with such confidence and blatant excitement. There was no reluctance or compassion in her words. Just blunt honesty. I really can't wait till I kill my first human. At this point, she looked slightly aroused as she indulged in her fantasy. The perverse joy she felt just from imagining the countless ways she would kill the humans was laid bare for them to see. No nuance, no further deep thoughts. Just that pure, savage bloodlust. As Ray stood there and listened to all of this, his eyes wide open to take in all of these words, he couldn't help but recoil at the rawness of Mija's intent. What was I expecting? He told himself silently. This was a dragon the same as the many who had driven humanity, as well as the other races of the world, to a state of constant warfare. Her people were responsible for countless atrocities. They were responsible for the deaths of some of his comrades as well. So what did he expect? Is this really the time for me to search for nuances? Ultimately, they are the enemy, my enemy. Right now, he and Lucielle were in enemy territory. There was no luxury to think otherwise. He. Right? Humans are so dumb. Lucielle broke the resulting silence with her excited voice, causing the tension to vanish as quickly as it came. Don't you think so too, Rai? Ray slowly turned to Lucielle, who now nudged him playfully, smiling with so much glee and excitement that it matched Mija's expression. Lucielle. His thoughts trailed as he stared deep into her eyes. All this time, he had assumed she was going along with things so well, judging by her behavior, that he didn't for once realize just how hard that was. She acclimated to this dragon civilization a lot better than him, but, just how did she take all of this? So many of her comrades died to dragons, and she has probably fought with and killed more dragons than I have. She has experienced this war since it started nearly 11 years ago, and I'm sure they've taken a lot from her, more than I can currently understand. Yet, how can she remain so calm and collected? Her perfect smile, her clear voice, her natural body movements. Everything about Lucielle felt genuine, but Ray knew more than anyone else that she didn't feel any of the things she was displaying. Yet why did it feel so real? Why did it feel like her regular self? Could it be that the Grand Mage Lucielle that he knew was just as real as the dragon student Luke Ia who was now in front of him? A complete facade. Something about that frightened Ray, but it also brought about a weight of melancholy that he was unable to resist. It was sad, so sad. I can only imagine how it must feel to hear all of this about my own people, to be around the very same enemies who have killed so many of my people, and who intend to kill even more. Taking all of it in, while wrestling with his newfound perspective, he forced his lips to curl upward while chuckling as sincerely as he could. Yeah. Humans are dumb indeed. Ha ha ha. After leaving the practical hall, Mijay showed them around the campus grounds a little more. They visited the park, and a few more recreation centers, before returning to the cafeteria for a meal. The draconic cuisine were all foreign to Ray and Lucielle, but they had to pretend as if they were already familiar with the kinds of strange foods they would be eating. Thankfully, since they had already spent a little over a week before coming to the academy, they had enough practice. They ate and discussed a host of other topics, taking advantage of the rather long break, but ultimately, it had to end at some point. Once the break period was over, Ray and Lucielle had to return to the classroom for the next class. During the second class, he was able to pay more attention, thanks to the brief rundown of the topics that Mijay was so kind to give. Thanks to her thoughtfulness, he knew a bit about the subjects they would be offering at their level. He also knew that he and Lucielle would have to go to the library to borrow the necessary textbooks so he could be up to date with the current curriculum and also acclimate to their current academic situation. The rest of the classes went by like a blur, and before Ray realized it, the day was over. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Hope you enjoyed the chapter. Practical sessions will properly begin tomorrow. Things get a little heated there, so I just thought I'd give you two a little heads up. Once again, Mijay made it her responsibility to inform Ray and Lucielle about one of the pertinent class activities that they had to know about. Thus far, she had helped them acclimate to the academy a great deal, and it didn't seem like she was ever going to let them be just yet. Despite her cute, childlike appearance, she almost had a motherly vibe about her. Thanks, Mijay. Yeah. Appreciate it. She giggled with satisfaction as soon as she heard that, a hint of pink flashing on her cheeks. Classes just ended, so most of the students were gathered in groups, while others were preparing to leave. As a result, the class was a bit rowdier than normal. Since it's getting a bit late, and you'll still need time to get adjusted to your dorms, why don't we start going? I can take you guys and show you where you'll be staying. Her kindness really knew no bounds. As usual, Lucielle gave a heartfelt smile and thanked her for the help, taking the offer of assistance wholeheartedly. However, Ray had other plans. Actually, I was hoping Ado and I would do the honor for me, since he's a guy, and it seems he's already leaving too. He intentionally raised his voice so that the departing Adonis would hear him, and the flinch that the boy had as he walked towards the door made it clear that he heard every bit of what Ray said. No, probably the whole conversation between Mijay and the two. Just as soon as he heard this, though, he tried to pick up pace. Unfortunately for him. Ado and I, my man. You wouldn't mind helping out your classmate, would you? It was already too late. As Ray expected, he was completely stunned by the whole thing, but he wasn't the only one. Even the girls Lucielle and Mijay displayed sheer shock as they watched the overly familiar attitude that Ray exhibited as he clung to the class loner. The whole class also displayed their fair share of surprise. From what I gathered, it seems Adonis was popular when he first showed up too. A few looked down on him as a newbie, but he proved himself and excelled greatly in class. However, he never warmed up to anyone since his first arrival, and apparently that's how he had been in his previous class. Ray thought as he looked at his prey with a friendly smile. The Adonis he knew was very charismatic, so befriending his classmates even to the point of becoming a leader shouldn't have been too difficult. Yet, why was he going down the loner route? Maybe it's tied to his goal somehow. Please be safe on your journey. Tell me all about it tomorrow. Bye. Ray waved at the flabbergasted girls, dragging Ado and I out of the class as he marched away. Reluctantly, the latter finally decided to tag along. I never agreed to any of this, he muttered, looking at Ray in the eyes for the very first time since their reunion. His golden eyes still seemed the same despite his new appearance. Well, shouldn't we help out our classmates whenever we can? Ray smiled playfully, but Adonis used the chance to detach himself from Ray's grasp. He clearly did not appreciate physical contact in the slightest. Fine. I'll show you to your dorms. You have your identification card, right? Your dorm number should be written there. Before both boys realized it, they were walking on campus grounds, on their way to the boys' dorms. Since the place for girls was in the opposite direction, there was no way Lucielle and Mijay could ever bump into them, not to talk of interrupting their conversation. As a result, Ray had Adonis all to himself. Master, you're acting sug. Stop it, Emile. This is strategic. Ray once again denied the accusations of his symbiote slime and decided to give Adonis his full focus. Speaking of Adonis, he had a relatively fast pace as they both walked, most likely due to the fact that he wanted to get rid of the bothersome Ray as soon as possible. Of course, the latter realized this, so he tried to make the best of their time together. How has this academy been for you so far, Ado and I? Fine. Do you have any subjects that you have any trouble with? Maybe it's none. How about your friends? Do you have any friends? I do. Quite a few of them. Really? You don't seem to have any from what I can see. You've been stalking me. No, but they're in other classes, so you probably don't know them. You liar. Ray gritted his teeth in frustration as he listened to Adonis' half-assed responses. He already knew the guy never made any friends even in his previous class, so what was he on about? After being frustrated from asking petty questions, he finally decided to take the kid gloves off and probe even deeper. Unfortunately for him, he was met with a similar wall. Every question he asked was either answered perfectly, or deflected in such a way that Ray had no excuse to venture further into the discourse. All in all, Adonis was a very difficult person to properly assess, not to mention interrogate. He was completely stuck. I can now understand how he has been able to throw off suspicion perfectly until now. He's really good. Before Ray even realized it, both he and Adonis had arrived right in front of his hostel door in the boys' dorms. Here you are. It recognizes your face, or handprint, so you don't need a key to get in. As soon as he said this, Adonis made to leave. Wait. He didn't bother answering Ray. It seemed, after fulfilling his role in bringing him to the dorm, Ado and I was going to rid himself of all contact with the classmate called Rai. There was no way Ray could have that after getting to this point. Don't walk away from this, Adonis. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Hope you enjoyed the chapter, and you're prepared for the mass release that'll be happening soon. Don't walk away from this. Adonis. The moment these words echoed in the air, the one being addressed suddenly froze up. He slowly turned his head, mechanically shifting his face to look at Ray, who was a few steps behind him. Ray had a serious look on his face, something akin to a frown, as he gazed deep into Adonis' eyes. Then, before the latter could even utter a word in response to the name he had just been called, Ray took a few steps forward and caught up to him. I cast sound magic around, so no one heard what I said except you. Despite saying this, there was no hint of relief in the tense face that Adonis had. Perhaps he would have felt a bit more relieved if he hadn't been called by his actual name by a new student, but right now, He was in the middle of making a choice. He was thinking only one thing: how to get rid of RAI and keep his identity secret. Relax, Adonis. You've grown a lot more tense since we last met. As Ray uttered those words, now right in front of the still Adonis, he placed his hand on his shoulder. This time, there was no attempt to shrug it off, or walk away. The boy was perfectly motionless. Who are you? Narrowing his eyes, he finally uttered the words that anyone would be expected to ask in his shoes. It was only at this point that Ray partially lifted the perfect veil, revealing his true self right there and there to the boy, who went from being cautious to downright shocked. His bulging eyes revealed just how intense his surprise was, but the beads of sweat that danced on his face, and the slight tremors of his quivering lips also added to it. He slowly parted his lips as he uttered a single word. It was both a confirmation and a question. Ray. Every room in the boys' dorm was identical, and Ray's was no exception. It had the standard furniture: a bed, wardrobe, bedside table, a study desk, with a comfortable chair right behind it. The wardrobe was especially large, already equipped with uniforms and sufficient casual clothes for use. There were 2 other doors apart from the entrance/exit, and they led to the restroom/bathroom, as well as the mini training room. Every student had the setup to allow them practice privately, in the comfort of their private spaces. The room was painted a bland white, but there was an option to customize it if sufficient reason was given to the staff. There was no point to it anyway, so Ray didn't bother with any of that, and he had no intention to ever do so. Within this cozy and neat room, Ray found himself seated on his considerably large bed while looking at the boy who sat opposite him on the study chair. For a moment, only silence existed in the air as the two looked at each other quietly. However, it was only a matter of time before the decorum was shattered. "How did you find me?" Adonis broke the silence with his question, his golden eyes carefully observing Ray with every sentence he uttered. His fingers were interlocked, and it seemed he was trying his best to remain calm. "Is that really the first thing you're going to say?" Ray mumbled, just loud enough so the latter could pick up what he said. For another second or two, no one said anything. This time, though, Ray took the initiative and spoke first. "It's good to see you, Adonis. I'm glad you're safe and well." He meant every word of it too. "I still have many questions, and there are a lot of things to get off my chest. But right now, it's just such a relief to see you again, honestly." He made a smile as he watched Adonis' countenance fall a little. "Same here." His tone felt heavy, and while there was sincerity in Adonis' words, it almost felt like he didn't fully mean what he said. He wasn't happy to see Ray. "You've changed, man." Seeing this caused Ray to utter the words he had been thinking for a while now. "What happened to you? Where have you been all this time, and I mean before you came here?" Adonis said nothing. "What have you been up to? What exactly is it that made you leave everyone behind? I have so many questions for you, Adonis." Once again, Adonis didn't respond. At least, not until after a few seconds had passed and he managed to collect his thoughts. "Why are you here, Ray?" Upon hearing the question, Ray frowned. He could feel a tinge of annoyance rising in his chest, but it vanished almost instantly. "I'm trying to reason with you here, but you're not making it easy for me, Adonis." Ray knew he had a lot of explaining to do on his part. He still hadn't apologized to Adonis for lying to him, and even now he felt guilty as he looked at his friend's downtrodden face. But, something was off. The person he was looking at wasn't the Adonis he remembered. "I can't tell you that. There's still so much I don't know, Adonis. I want to trust you, but you're not giving me anything here." Ray thought to himself. More than anything, he wanted to share the plan with Adonis. Having an otherworlder as a trustworthy ally in this academy was not something he expected, and it was probably not what Adrian expected as well. If they both worked on this in conjunction with Luciel, they could achieve their mission and throw a wrench in whatever ulterior plans that Adrian was bound to have. But Ray couldn't just tell Adonis yet. "I understand." A dry response came from the golden boy's lips as he finally raised his head and looked at Ray point blank. His eyes were cold, fueled with resolve, but concealed by a layer that seemed impossible to unravel. "I also can't tell you anything about my purpose here either. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading." Adonis. Ray's tone was low, but intentionally heavy. He tried to be as calm and friendly with Adonis, not resorting to harsher methods to get the information he wanted, but the hero wasn't cooperating at all. "I'm sure he knows what he's doing, but if there's a chance it would affect my mission, then it's important I find out what it is." Besides, ever since he met Adonis, Ray hadn't stopped thinking about how useful he would be to his current objective. However, he couldn't bring him on board yet. Not until he knew Adonis' true motives. "Look, Ray. I won't ask any questions about you. I won't ask how you got so strong, how you were able to hide your power for so long, or even why you're here. None of those things matter to me now." Adonis said this in such a serious, detached manner that Ray had to wonder if this was truly the guy he knew. Not only did he lack that glow of optimism and compassion that usually filled his eyes, but he was cold, too cold for Adonis. Perhaps this was his true self all along, and Ray had merely gotten used to a facade. Either way, the confrontation was jarring. "It's best if we go about our individual activities like we don't know each other. I won't trouble you, so I'd really appreciate it if you didn't bother me." "Bother you?" The boy in front of him was truly Adonis, but something had definitely happened to him, something that changed him. For a moment after these words echoed in the air, no one spoke. The two simply stared. Then, "I'd assume that Lucia dragon you came with is also an ally. She's Luciel, isn't she?" "Yeah," Ray responded nearly half-heartedly. He silently wondered how Adonis figured it out, but considering how her features resembled a younger Luciel, he realized it would be easy for him to deduce. Plus, her name wasn't exactly the subtlest. "Of course, she's the one." As Adonis said this, he gave a distant, nearly sad smile. "Who else would it be?" Ray didn't understand what Adonis was implying from all this, but he had to get back to the main subject. The gears in his brain were turning, seeking ways that he could convince Adonis to join his side, but he met dead ends everywhere. "I can't mentally control him thanks to his hero privilege, which means I either have to overpower him, or coax him." The stubbornness in Adonis' new personality told him that he wouldn't be easily convinced, and the last thing Ray wanted to do was fight with his friend. "Are we still friends, though?" No, that wasn't the right question. Were they ever friends? Out of everyone among our classmates, he was the one I respected and cared for after Alicia. I think, to an extent, he respected me too, but I'm not sure anymore. Ray narrowed his eyes as he stared at the mask of a face that Adonis put up. "There's something else bothering you, isn't there, Adonis?" Rather than forcing some form of partnership, Ray reckoned it was best to take the more patient and understanding route. "It's not like he's going to expose my identity anyway. I don't need to rush things too. It's just... Can you do me a favor, Ray?" Ray's thoughts came to a grinding halt as Adonis interrupted him with a rather lull tone. "Can you not tell Luciel about my identity?" A sad smile formed on his face as he asked this, his countenance falling even lower. "Of course, I know I have no right to ask you for this, and I also won't insist that you go along with it or anything, but... I understand." Ray responded with a smile while nodding. "Thank you, Ray." Adonis didn't even look Ray in the eyes as he spoke. Instead, he just rose to his feet and bowed his head, not wasting any time to walk towards the door. He's just going to walk away? For real? Ray had two options at that point, both of which involved stopping Adonis from leaving, but he already knew the one he was going to go with. Wait. Raising his voice, he also stood from his bed. As soon as he heard this, Adonis came to a grinding halt. He didn't turn back to look at Ray, neither did he display any sign of a change of heart. Chances were that he would only stand there for a few more seconds before leaving. But those few seconds were all that Ray needed. I just don't understand. Ray muttered, looking at the back of the same boy he admired for a long time. I don't understand why you would abandon everything and everyone. One of the reasons why he changed his perspective on life and people in general was due to Adonis. The latter was always so selfless, considerate, and confident, and he helped everyone, no matter the cost. Ray didn't have that kind of selfless side to him, but he always felt inspired by the act of empathy and kindness that Adonis displayed. The responsibility that came with having power. Yet, it seemed like none of that was even present in the boy he was staring at. Look, man, I'm sorry, okay. I apologize for keeping things from you, and from everyone. I had various reasons for doing it, but those are all excuses at this point. I take responsibility for my mistakes, but I recognize the hurt and harm I caused everyone, including you. So, I'm sorry. Despite pouring his heart out apologizing, Adonis merely smiled at Ray and slightly shook his head. It's fine, Ray. None of that matters now. His calm, casual manner of addressing these heavy issues bothered Ray to no end. There was no passion or attachment to his words, just pure disinterest. Why? At this point, Ray began to clench his fist and grit his teeth. Why are you being like this? His emotions were on a roller coaster, jumping up and down as he stared at Adonis with an intense gaze. When did you become this way? Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Why do you think Adonis changed? Anyone got theories? Tense silence permeated the entire room. Ray was now glaring at Adonis, who had a stoic look on his face as he turned to face the former. They were both on their feet, and it seemed like this dreary atmosphere would last forever. However, someone had to say something, or do something, at some point. And Adonis took that upon himself. I'm also sorry, Ray. I truly am, but this is a path that I have to walk alone. For a brief moment, a glimpse of the old Adonis shone through. The smile, the glow in his eyes, and the tone of his voice, Ray felt like he was speaking to his friend. But all of that vanished quickly. I wish you good fortune in whatever your mission here is, Ray. Though I don't think any of it matters, ultimately. After saying all of this, Adonis resumed his departure. In only a few seconds, he had left Ray standing shell-shocked and all alone in his room. Ray leaked out a heavy sigh as he collapsed on his bed, mentally and emotionally exhausted, mostly the latter, though. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Right as he thought about this, before he could even dwell on his just concluded conversation with Adonis, he heard something in his head. Ding. His eyes slightly widened and he swiftly composed himself, compartmentalizing his surprise so he could properly address the notification he just received. Looks like you're finally done settling in, Lucielle. As soon as he thought this, a slightly exhausted voice sweetly echoed in his mind. Yeah. Me Ja is quite talkative, but I was finally able to get her to leave me all alone. Good job. Ray smiled. He could already imagine how uncomfortable it would have been for Lucielle to have the class rep hang around her room instead of leaving as soon as she was done with escorting. Who do you think is to blame for this, Ray? You already knew this would happen, didn't you? That's why you decided to cling to that antisocial loner in class, 'cause you knew he wouldn't overstay his welcome after showing you to your room. Ha ha ha. You got me. Ray remembered the favor Adonis asked of him, and while he wasn't bound by anything to go along with it, he decided to. It's not like it affects the mission in any way. Besides, if Lucielle finds out Adonis is here, it could lead to some complications. The United Human Alliance placed a lot of emphasis on the hero, after all. Since that was the case, then Adonis was a prized asset that Lucielle, or any human belonging to the Alliance, could not simply ignore. I might be the strongest otherworlder right now, but Adonis is the most important. Well, he was. Right now, we can't rely on him for anything. I already made it a philosophy not to force anyone to do what they don't want to do. Just as I'll let Alicia return to Earth, I'll let Adonis do what he likes. After all, Ray understood how hypocritical it would be for him to do otherwise. It could have been me in Adonis' shoes. I certainly wouldn't appreciate anyone getting in the way of my personal freedom. Once Ray thought of things like that, he was able to decide on a more passive position regarding Adonis. I'll continue to watch him, of course, but that'll be the end of it. Adonis had made his choice, and so had he. There was no right or wrong regarding their decisions. We just have to stick to the consequences. Of course, all of these things were running simultaneously with Ray's other layered thoughts, and he was still speaking with Lucielle through his mind through everything. Are you sure the dragons won't be able to listen into this conversation, though? Ray smiled, completely understanding her concerns. They were completely unwarranted, though. He had ensured to take all sorts of precautions in order to ensure nothing of the sort happened. Link might be an A-tier skill, but it creates a secure channel between two people through their mind. Adrian used it to communicate with Justin for a while, and not even I could detect anything. Besides, I tested it out a few times too, and I also detailedly analyzed the skill description. He thought to himself. The skill was as good as an S-tier skill, in Ray's eyes. The only reason it was ranked so low had to be due to its limitations. It can only be done between two people. The two also had to physically touch, and mutually consent, for the link to be deactivated. Hence, it functioned as a passive skill. This ensured that Ray and Lucielle could be connected constantly. We can also know where the other is, so that's a good thing. He smiled to himself. If Lucielle hadn't followed him on this mission, he would have connected himself with Alicia. That was how highly he thought of the skill. He didn't tell Lucielle any of this, though. Instead, he simply told her not to worry about it. Thankfully, that was enough to ease her worries. That Adonai guy, though, he's pretty cute, isn't he? Why are you asking me that? At this point, Ray couldn't help but slap his face. The last thing he wanted to do was discuss boys with Lucielle. Especially since the boy in question was Adonis. Let's just say that I think you can relate. I saw how you clung to him while leaving, Ray. What? I mean, you didn't even pay any attention to any of the dragon girls. Instead, you were. What are you implying? Nothing. Yeah, it better be nothing. Ray wanted to throw up at this point, but he controlled himself anyway. Why would he be focused on any of the dragon girls, or boys, when someone like Lucielle existed? In his eyes, she was easily the prettiest in the whole class. Of course, Ray would rather die than tell her that. Besides, why are you so focused on romance with dragons? I guess you must really have a thing for. No. The cold way Lucielle responded to those words made Ray shiver a little. He only meant it as a joke, the same way she had been teasing him, but the way she responded completely made him regret that decision. He wasn't seeing the current expression on her face, but he could already guess what it would be. Not pleasant at all. In any case, tomorrow will be a lot more serious. You ready? Yeah. Mijay told me a little more about it. You should have come with us, Ray. We had a blast. Something tells me I didn't miss out on too much. But you did. Honestly. Mijay even tripped and nearly fell. If I didn't catch her, it would have been bad. She was so embarrassed, it was cute. Is that so? Yeah. In fact. Lucielle kept ranting on and on about how her day went, and Ray did his best to listen and offer his commentary on everything. It was the least he could do after subjecting Lucielle to this mission without giving much thought into the consequences it would have on her. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. At first, his steps were hurried. He walked as though he was running fast, and far away from the room he proceeded out of. However, after creating some distance between himself and the door, Adonis slowed down. His legs slowly moved, as his golden hair bathed in the late evening glow. Classes in the academy ended pretty late, into the evening, for that matter. Thanks to escorting Ray to his room, and having the discussion he had with him, more time had passed than he initially realized. Not only did this mean he was behind schedule in training, but it also meant he had completely disrupted his detailed plan for success. Though, at the moment, none of that seemed to matter. This was why he finally slowed down while walking, why he could feel each step getting heavier as he struggled to properly breathe while his racing heart nearly drove him mad. He felt like tearing his chest apart due to how fast his heart was beating. His brain pounded too, causing him to enter a state of emotional pain, all of which he did his best to suppress as he marched forward one step at a time. Ha! Misty breaths leaked from both his nostrils and lips as he felt the coolness of the evening wash over him. I'm sorry, Ray, Lucielle, everyone. His thoughts rang through, yet he didn't like that fact. He didn't like how attached he still was, despite how resolved he was to march forward. Seeing you today, Ray, talking to you. I nearly wavered. But, this has to be done. No, I should be even more determined to make it work because of you. Despite these thoughts flowing in his head, Adonis still had the same pounding feeling in his chest. It didn't want to stop. This reminds me of old times. Me, you, and her, we're back here, the Dragon Continent. Was this fate? A twist of destiny perhaps? Adonis wasn't sure. He was certain about one thing, though, the fact that he wouldn't let anything deter him from doing what had to be done. That was the whole reason why he was here, the reason he left. Several months ago. Damn it. Disheveled, with his bloodshot eyes swollen due to the tears he had shed all day and night, Adonis yelled in the solace of his room. Veins appeared all over his face as he screamed, displaying both rage and sorrow. Bereavement had become his only companion following the days after the dragon attack on the capital, and the death of his classmates. 2 of his classmates died due to the overwhelming appearance of dragons, all because of his weakness. He wasn't strong enough to save his friends, and he wasn't strong enough to protect the capital. It was all his fault that the capital went up in flames. Thousands upon thousands perished as a result of his weakness. You disgusting worm. You haven't changed at all from the past. You were given a second chance. A chance to save everyone. Lucielle and Ray sacrificed their lives for you, everyone sacrificed their lives so you could make it back and make things right. Yet you still screwed it up. His classmates had already told him not to blame himself. The Royal Council, the Grand Mage, and the head warrior as well as everyone in the royal estate praised him for his valor and bravery. Everyone told him that he did the best he could, and tried to make him forget his weakness. But he couldn't. Adonis could not forget the look Eric had before he died. He couldn't shake off the expression on everyone's face when they were about to meet certain death. Perhaps everyone else could move forward with it, but he couldn't. Every time he slept, he had nightmares of the incident. Worse still, he dreamt of what was bound to happen in the future. More people have died and left us compared to before. If it's like this, is it even possible to win? Yes, Adonis understood that they were all stronger than in the past, but that also meant the adversities they faced would only grow worse in order to compensate for their growing might. In a way, this was what Luciel warned him about. The dragonfly effect. His thoughts trailed. He had changed too much of the past, and now everyone was suffering for it. Perhaps he didn't change enough. So many thoughts ran in Adonis' mind at that moment, until he realized the terrible truth about himself and the current state of this world. At this rate, it will be a repeat of last time. His goal when returning was to save everyone, but a few people had died already, while the others deserted them. Ray was in a coma, and Alicia was under a curse. The rest weren't particularly shining stars before his regression except Belle, of course. Regardless, they were bound to reach their limits soon enough. And once that happens, it's game over. I can't beat the enemies alone, but, at this rate, I'll lose even more friends. He could see the many mistakes he had made along the way, and as he realized those errors, realizing how much he had messed up, he couldn't help but drown in an overwhelming sea of regret. We never beat a dragon lord in the past. There's still the dragon emperor to consider. How can we even? I don't, this is. Ultimately, Adonis felt stuck. Until. His eyes widened at that moment, and he collapsed to the ground on his knees. He found a way. Adonis found the only way that he and his friends could still win. By following this path, even the deaths of Eric, Billy, and everyone else who perished as a result of mistakes and weakness, would be remedied. He was the only one who could walk down this road, and he had no choice if he wanted to save everyone. I'll do it. I'll go to the Chamber of Ancients again and regress once again. Adonis thought to himself with absolute resolve. This time, for sure, he would save the world. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Now we know what our dear hero is planning. What do you think? The mission would be tough. Adonis already knew how powerful and ruthless the dragons could be. The last thing he wanted to do was underestimate them, or the journey he would have to take in order to arrive at his ultimate goal. He even considered staying in the capital a while until he was able to gather enough power and resources to depart. But no. I can't stay here any longer. As much as it pained him to admit it, everyone around him was holding him back. His insane growth would have been even more astronomical if he was alone, taking all the EXP for himself, and moving at his own pace. However, due to his consideration for everyone else and the fact that he recognized how important allies were, he had intentionally stifled his growth. The consequence for that was the death of his thousands. No more. Adonis resolved to leave the capital, to leave the United Human Alliance as a whole. He would travel due northwest, to the unknown regions in the continent, places that only he knew about thanks to his future knowledge. During the later years of the war, when the resources of humanity were nearly depleted, the Alliance was so desperate in their search for more resources that they sent scouts to various parts of the continent. To the untouched lands. Most of these expeditions yielded no fruit, but the ones that brought back results were able to turn the tide of war to the favor of humanity for a short while. A Calamity-class dungeon to the west, an abandoned base filled with treasures, the dark desert, and so much more. Adonis had previously planned to take his classmates to these places once the time was ripe, but there was no longer any need to. He didn't have to worry about them, or the fate of the Alliance anymore. Don't worry, everyone. I'll do this myself. I'll save you all by myself. I promise you all. That was his thought. Just as he resolved, Adonis left the capital. He stole away in the night and advanced northwest, desiring to harness all the power and resources for himself. There was no need to worry about anyone else. They would all be saved as soon as he regressed and corrected his mistakes. If he decided to hold on to what he currently had, he would lose everything and everyone yet again. Whether this was the height of selfishness or selflessness was inconsequential. As long as everyone was saved. And so, it began. Adonis conquered the Calamity class dungeon by himself and increased his level by nearly 2 times its initial amount, all in just a month. He obtained enchanted items from the treasure troves, and he was able to improve his skills in the dark desert. Thanks to one of the enchanted items he found, he was able to disguise himself as a dragon, as well as suppress his power. This led him to the next phase of his plan, the Dragon Continent. That was the tricky part. The future was clearly different from the present, which meant that he couldn't fully rely on his knowledge of the Dragon Continent that he remembered. Even before his regression, the dragons found a way to sniff the team out despite their best attempts to be covered. Of course, this was due to many reasons, mainly due to their numbers, so Adonis was confident that he wouldn't make the same mistakes that the humans made before his return. He was also leagues stronger than anyone had been before his regression, so he was confident that he would pull it off. Just as he planned, he was able to sneak into the Empire. However, the next problem presented itself to him: how to reach the Chamber of Ancients. The last time, it took the death of tens of thousands of human soldiers as well as the sacrifice of his classmates to reach the place. And all of this was after the guidance of the Oracle. Right now, I'm by myself. I can't force my way there. I'd be caught and beaten before I got very far. He had to find a smarter way to go about it. While trying to figure out a way to get to the capital, he actively investigated places and people, constantly moving from one place to the other, as long as it was close to the capital. Through it all, he did his best to blend in with the crowd. Ah, how he wished he could kill all the dragons that littered his sight. In his eyes, they were all as disgusting as the ones that were sent to the battlefield. They were disgusting monsters that deserved to be purged from the world. Purge? Should I systematically purge them while I'm at it? No, that wouldn't work. The information and investigation system in the Dragon Empire was leagues ahead of anything in most other parts of H-Trade thanks to their technology. They would sniff him out if he became a serial killer, and all his efforts thus far would be in vain. Adonis even considered joining the military, but he quickly banished that thought. If he wanted to get to the Chamber of Ancients, he had to at least be a dragon general, and that required serious qualifications and achievements. To avoid suspicion, he would have to start at the bottom, and then slowly rise up the ranks. Not only would this take a terribly long time to achieve, but he would have to commit unspeakable atrocities for the sake of the Dragon Empire to be even considered for the position he needed. That was not something Adonis could ever do. Even if nothing matters in this reality, since I want to change everything, it doesn't mean I'll compromise my morals to such an extent. That was what it meant to be himself a hero. Now out of options, completely trapped in a society of enemies, contemplating how to reach his target, Adonis agonized on what to do. It was at this point that an unexpected answer came to him, and from someone he would never have anticipated. And that pointed him to the Imperial Academy. Asterisk. 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 A/N. Thanks for reading. Hope you are not too bored by Adonis' story.